Last night, we had the NBA draft. And some of you might say, well, Mark, I'm not a huge NBA draft guy. And I want to share this with you. I did receive a bit of a scoop today on something that I wanted to bring you guys into. There is a very, very sad and cautionary tale, right? A very sad cautionary tale about one G.G. Jackson and about all that went into what's going on with Gigi. Now, I did the Daily Crow, the Spurs Up show earlier today with Chris Phillips, and Chris Phillips says, "Man, like this is his take is essentially it's a bad look for G.G. Jackson, it's a bad look for Lamont Paris, and it's a bad look for South Carolina basketball that this projected lottery pick went in the middle of the second round." And I said, "Man, this is nobody's fault except G.G. Jackson himself. This is a bed that he made, right? This is a bed that he's got the wrong people in his ear, giving him the wrong advice. He's got far too many yes men in his corner, all right? And he declared early for the draft. And I'll tell you, guys, I had a national personality. I was having a conversation. The date on this was March 11th, okay? And I was having a conversation with somebody that will remain nameless, okay? But it's a national personality. We've what do I want to say here? I'll just tell you that. A national personality. And the national personality says, "Mark, I really wish the adults hadn't pushed Gigi to reclassify. He would have been a top 5 pick if he stayed in his class. I think he's going to get lost now." This was a national personality that told me this on March 11th. And I didn't know what he meant by getting lost because at that time, G.G. Jackson was a projected top 10 pick. He was telling me this on March 11th. And I'm like, okay, what does lost mean? He goes 13th? No. He falls out of the lottery. He falls out of the mid-first round. He falls out of the late first round. He falls out of the beginning of the second round and slides all the way to the middle of the second round. I wrote back at the time, I said, interesting take, man. He seemed lost much of the season, if I'm honest with you. All right. The same contact today, I asked him if I could screenshot and tweet out that take today. And he asked that I not do that out of respect to an 18-year-old kid who's going through a hard time right now, something I totally understand. But then he told me the following. He said, "Mark, thanks for asking. You didn't have to do that, but I appreciate it. I'd rather not do anything that feels like it's piling on the kid." And he says, "I don't know if I told you the story, but G.G. Jackson never wanted to reclassify and never wanted to go to USC. His mom had her hand out, perhaps ruined her son's life." Now, I'll share this with you guys, and I'll share this with Diesel. I would prefer if we don't podcast that part of it, okay? Because I don't want to, like the contact, I don't want to be part of mudslinging on an 18-year-old who is going through a very, very difficult time. But you remember what happened here. The whole thing with G.G. Jackson felt like a race to become a millionaire as fast as possible. Wanted to go to UNC, committed to UNC. Wanted to reclassify so he could go to UNC earlier. UNC said, "No, we only have a spot for you in your natural class, in the natural order of things. That's where we have the scholarship for you that year." He said, no, I want the money faster. So I'm going to go to South Carolina for a year because I'm not a student athlete anyway. I'm just counting down the days to get to the NBA draft. And that's exactly what he did. And he was pouting and he acted like a guy at South Carolina that acted like he was too good for the scene there, right? Diesel and I were talking about this a little bit off the air. And his pouting and his bad attitude and his benching and his Instagram live posts And again, guys, I am not here to trash on a 17, 18-year-old kid. I think he's got a ton of growing up to do. I think he's got an unbelievably athletic body that he needs to grow into. And I think he's got the wrong influences in his ear to allow him to be placed in this situation. Remember, my contact told me that had he not reclassified, he'd have been a top 5 pick next year. And he's telling me he was going to get lost when he was still a projected top 10 pick. And guess what? He did get lost. He could see the train coming a mile away, and it's exactly what happened. And it's a cautionary tale to you, to me, to all these other kids out there, man. Like, you got to be ready for the NBA. You got to have the right people in your ear. You have to have good influences in your life. It's not a race to collect the NBA paycheck, okay? It's a thing that happens when you're ready. But with a guy like this, Diesel, that's a consensus number 1, number 2, number 3 player in America, a lot of times there's a race. Hey, you could be a millionaire in 2 years. You're 16 today. You could be a millionaire in 2 years. Here's what you have to do. You got to reclassify. You got to do this. He wasn't ready for all this. He made some really bad decisions.
Yeah, I mean, it's a story as old as time, having people in your ear who want things from you. So they need you to get yours quickly so that they can get theirs from you. Happens all the time. Anybody that's set to make some money, it happens constantly. So it's not like that's a new story of any kind. But this is something Josh Pate said a while back that bugs me because people pick and choose when they want to use the word kid versus when they want to use the word adult. You got young men who are legally adults, who are making an awful lot of money from name, image, and likeness, and are set to make a lot of money going forward as they enter their professional careers. They have been exposed to big boy decisions for a number of years at this point. I understand that it's maybe not entirely fair to ask someone to make big boy decisions when their brain chemistry is still adjusting and still changing and still maturing. But people pick and choose when you call these young men kids versus when you call them adults. You go out on the football field, you make a big hit, and they say, man, that's a grown-ass man. But the same guy can make a dumb decision 12 hours later after the game, get in a car wreck and kill somebody and say, oh, he's just a kid. Which is it? Are we treating college athletes who are making more money than just about anyone else on campus who's not their head coach? Are we treating them as adults or are we treating them as kids? I have zero sympathy for G.G. Jackson. He had people in his ear telling him the right thing. He had coaches at North Carolina, that bastion of integrity that is the University of North Carolina, telling him, you need to wait. You need to just be patient. Please be patient. Wait one more year. You have the chance to be great. And then he's got another, he's got the angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other, saying, go now, go now, go now, go now. I don't have any sympathy for G.G. Jackson falling as far as he did. He was not a good teammate. He was not a good representative of the University of South Carolina. Did not hold himself and conduct himself well on the court or in his locker room. I don't have any problem with G.G. Jackson falling down. Schadenfreude be damned. It's the bet he made. He's got to lay in it.
Diesel, okay. So where I differ with you is I think it's okay to have empathy for the kid. Okay. But make no mistake about it. He is responsible for this. It is his bed. Now, to your point, brain chemicals, etc. Our brains are forming until we're 25. All right. At 25, our brains are fully formed. How can we expect to make great decisions before the brain is fully formed? He's got sometimes, we all hear about influences, and it's just obvious to me that G.G. Jackson has bad influences in his life. All right. Now, this is going to be out there and this is going to be podcasted, but how about the fact that my national contact knew he was going to be lost in March when he was still a projected top 10 pick? And how about the fact that he never wanted to go to South Carolina? Okay. Never wanted to reclassify, never wanted to go to South Carolina. His mom had her hand out, maybe ruined her son's life. That is from a national contact with knowledge as to G.G. Jackson, and a guy who is very, 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 very plugged in. All right. And do I hear that? Do I feel bad for G.G.? Yeah. Do I hear that and say, man, maybe this guy doesn't have the tools to know how to behave in certain situations? Yeah, I do. I do feel that way. But most importantly, he still has a shot. He is with Memphis now. Gosh, I hope Ja Morant and him seem like a combustible combination, do they not? I hope he spends more time with Marcus Smart, who they just traded for, than he does Ja Morant. But he's got a shot, and they're going to give him a shot. But in the pre-draft process, he looked like a boy amongst men. You know, he looked small and scrawny, and he doesn't have this incredible wingspan. And then during the pre-draft process, I was reading about this. His body language sucked. I was reading reports that he was winded after 10 minutes. Then it was like, well, he had bronchitis, but he was winded, and his body language is bad. And the intensity on his own workouts and his own pro day wasn't there. And you're asking these teams to invest millions of dollars in somebody who didn't have a great season last year, didn't really look the part, is getting pushed around in the pre-draft workout circuits, and then is kind of lollygagging in his own pro day, right? These teams aren't coming here for that. These teams aren't going to invest 7 figures in that.
That sounds like a guy who, despite all of the negatives that you just mentioned, still believed and had somebody in his ear telling him he was a lock for a top 5 pick or top 10 pick. Well, I don't have to work out hard. I don't have to look good in my pro day. I don't have to impress GMs and coaches because I'm G.G. Jackson. They already think I'm great.
And that's where he's at, folks. That's where he's at. I'll tell you what. It's really interesting to see how this whole thing is going to shake out. What is your take on this, guys? You know, Chris Phillips was telling me today that this is going to be used to negatively recruit against South Carolina. Hey, if you're a 4 or 5 star, why would you go to South Carolina? Look what happened to G.G. Jackson. And I said, Chris, things you and I have tweeted are used to negatively recruit against you and me. I still get screenshots of stuff I tweeted 12 years ago. Okay? Like there's idiots out there that go back and comb through your tweets and try to find anything you may have said that might be objectionable. Let's see if I can hurt him today. Everything is used to negatively recruit. But if I were Lamont Paris, I would do everything exactly the same. I would recruit G.G. Jackson. I would want him to come to my school, right? I do not consider the G.G. Jackson experience at South Carolina a failure for the Gamecocks. I consider it a failure for G.G. Jackson.